Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, The Lens India Professional Photography. In our last video, we learnt about the physical attributes of a subject and how the light emphasizes on the physical attributes of the subject. Today, we are going to understand about the direction of the lights and how this direction of the lights are emphasizing on a particular physical attribute of a subject or an object. So let's talk about those direction of light today. So mainly there are four directions of light, which are commonly known as, first is known as the front light, second is the side light, third is the backlight, and fourth is the stop light. So how do this direction of the light emphasizes on physical attribute of a subject? So before we go into that, let us understand about what is the meaning of the front light, or what is the meaning of the side light or backlight or the top light. So we say about the front light that when the subject is in front of the photographer and the light is coming directly from the back side of the photographer and falling on the subject. So what happens when the front light exists, or when the photographer is shooting a subject when the direction of light is the front? So in front light, as you know, that the light is falling directly on the subject, so every detail of the subject is visible to the photographer as well as to the camera. So you don't lose on any of the details. And if you talk about the shadow, we know that when the light is coming from one side, the shadow falls on the other side. So in front light, since the light is coming from the front of the subject, and in that case the shadow is exactly at the back of the subject, so you hardly see any shadows. And what happens due to this? As there are no shadows, we normally lose a depth in a picture and the image appears to be flat. Okay, but then what does this front light emphasizes on? The front light emphasizes on the mass of a subject or an object, or the colors of a subject or an object. So what does it mean that when we are shooting some object or subject where the colors are so prominent? Okay, so in that case we need to see that whether the light which is coming on the subject or falling on the subject, from which direction it is falling. So if it is falling on the subject from the front direction with respect to the subject, then definitely it is a good movement to shoot the subject for the colors or also for the mass of the subject. It also emphasizes on the full shape of the subject, right? So this is about the front light. Now let's talk about the side light. Side light means what? As the name suggests, it is coming from the sides. So we have two sides, either left side or the right side. So when the light is coming from the left hand side or the right hand side of the subject, we call it as a side light. Now, when we say about the light, or when we talk about the light as a natural light, we have only one source of light. And what is that? That is the sun. So the side light, when it is coming, so one side of the subject is properly lit and other side goes into the dark, because as we have learned that from the direction where the light is coming, that portion or that part gets properly lit, but the other side goes into dark because of the shadows. So this is what is basically phenomena happening in the side light. And due to this, exactly what happens? So a proper depth is getting created in the subject or an object. So you can see the proper molds of a subject, and it gives a three-dimensional look sort of. And that is how this, sometimes this lighting is also called as a dynamic type of lighting, which creates the drama of light and shadow in the subject, and many a times these images look very beautiful. So in short, what does the side light emphasize? So side light emphasizes mainly on the molds of a subject or an object. It emphasizes on the forms of a subject or an object. It emphasizes on the texture of a subject or an object, and also it emphasizes on the highlights and shadows, which also we can call it as a tonality. So these are the attributes or the physical attributes which are indicated by the side light. Now another type of light is, or the direction of light is what we call it as a backlight. So when we are shooting a subject and when the light is coming from the back side of the subject, that is called as a backlight. So we might have seen very beautiful photographs of a subject or an object, particularly many pre-wedding photographers. They normally shoot in such conditions where the sunset is happening and they shoot a beautiful couple on the beaches to get a dark image and where the light is exactly behind the subject. So this type of lighting normally is called as a backlight direction. And what happens in this backlight direction? So the light, since it is coming from the back side of the subject, we normally tend to lose details from the angle what we are shooting. So hardly any details are seen when we are shooting with the backlight. And then what is prominent is in this backlight? So the overall shape of an object or a subject is basically emphasized. And this type of lighting is also called as rim lighting or maybe a kick lighting, and very dramatic type of lighting, and it creates a very good silhouettes. So many of these photographers also basically use this light to lit the subject from the back side so that it creates the separation of the subject and the background. So it's a very beautiful lighting, and definitely most of the times this light is present when we are shooting in the studio environment. But in natural environment, yes, it is only since one source of light, the other side of the subject goes into dark, and probably we need to add some additional lights to bring out those details out of the subject, unless we are really shooting the silhouettes. So this is the type of the backlighting. Another type of lighting is called as the top lighting. So top lighting is the type of lighting when the light is exactly on the overhead of the subject. Okay. So in a natural light scenario, we can say that the sun is exactly on the overhead. So what happens when the sun exactly on the overhead? So since it is a top lighting, so the shadows which are formed are very, very short, and particularly when we are shooting the portraits or something like this, the shadows are exactly behind or below the chin or maybe nose or maybe the eye sockets, and they create a very bad black patch at times, and these photos normally don't look good. This light is particularly also considered to be a very high contrast type of lighting, and if we say that this light normally does not work for the portrait, so do we really shoot in such cases? Yes, at times there are scenarios where we can shoot in the top light situation. So what physical attributes does this top light indicates to us? This top light direction normally indicates the overall shape of a subject, and it also indicates the texture of the vertical subjects. So this is how we normally use the top light. So where we can use this top light, as we say that it creates a very dark shadows. So particularly when we are shooting architectures or something like this, where the tall buildings are there and sort of design work or something like is present in those buildings. So this light can turn out to be a very good lighting because it creates the drama of light shades and tones, and also highlights and shadows in the design or the mold of the building. So this is how these four directions are basically emphasizing on the physical attributes of the subject. And so if you have seen my last video, in that last video we have learned about that when the light shows about lines, we shoot. When the light emphasizes us on basically the shapes, we shoot. When the light emphasizes on the tonality, we shoot. When the light emphasizes on color, we shoot. So there are other attributes also, like which can be termed as the derived attributes, like the texture, then the solidity and the patterns. So in short, if we want to summarize, how many types of physical attributes does the light shows to us? So the first is line, second is contrast, third is shape and forms, or it can also be termed as a molds, then the tonality, that is the shades we can say, then the colors, then texture, then mass, pattern and solidity. So there are almost 8 to 10 physical attributes which are normally emphasized by either of these particular directions of light. This is how we should skillfully understand the light. So what I'm trying to explain here is that normally what happens is that whenever we are on vacations and we try to shoot landscapes or portraits or the people in the town, which we normally call it as a street photography, we tend to forget to see the direction of light, and although we see that the scene is beautiful, but we land up in basically taking in the poor photographs, or the photographs are not as what we expected. So it is very important that when we are picking up our camera to take up any photograph, first we should understand what type of the light is and from which direction the light is coming. That will help us basically to shoot the pictures in a better way. Okay, so let's practice this. In couple of other videos which I will be making, I will be showing you these examples that how the direction of light has emphasized on a particular physical attribute of a subject or any object. That's all for today. Thank you so much. If you have liked this video, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe our channel and stay tuned. Thank you. Bye for now.